This might be a bit controversial, but I don't think product matters when you're first starting out. So many people that I mentor start with the product. And I think it's the obvious choice because when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you're more likely to be a product-oriented person. And what I mean by that is if you're at a stage where you're building something, even though no one is forcing you to, no one is telling you to do that, then you have a natural inclination towards building things, which means you're more of a product person. But when you're starting out, it's actually one of the worst places to focus on. And this is not unique. I'm not telling you off if you're like this, because the last 10 people that I worked with in my student cohorts were all product people and they all had to learn this lesson. So I'm making this video so that maybe this will make things easier for you. And the first question that I want you to ask is, at what point does your idea turn into a business? Where is that exact transition? Is it when you have a website, when you have a logo, when you launch, right? There are so many different steps along the way. At what point can you call an idea a business? To me, the most obvious answer there is when you have a paid customer. And so many people make this mistake because when I asked this question to my last group of cohorts, they were saying when you have a logo, when you have a website, when you've launched, when you have your first product. But it's not true. And the most extreme example of this is Berkshire Hathaway. If you just look at their website, this is what their website is. This is a company that's bringing in $364 billion in revenue and has 120 billion operating income. And this is their website. Right, so clearly this is an extreme example, but it does go to show that what you think is necessary might actually not be completely necessary at all. And it's such a tricky step because just because you think it's cool or useful doesn't mean that there are enough people out there who will also find it cool or useful, especially useful enough to pay for it. This is the mistake I made with my very first software that I wrote, which was this Chrome extension. It's a time zone tracker and it shows you where different meetings are. And I made it because I would have found it useful when I was traveling around internationally a lot, because I had family abroad, I had friends abroad. It was always a hassle to make these meetings work, and it was always a hassle to try and figure out what time zones would we be able to meet. And I took this all the way to this, which, as you can see, is a little bit more advanced. It has more time zones. You can add it to your Google Calendar. There's like a meeting feature, and this all worked. It was all good, but the problem was no one was willing to pay for it because it's not a big enough problem that people are willing to pay for it. There are a small subsection of people who have to contend with time zones on a regular basis, and for those people there exist free tools that are good enough that they don't have to pay for a solution. And so I couldn't get anyone to pay for this. And I still use it, to be fair. But if I'm being completely honest, I probably wouldn't pay for this either. So it was a complete failure. And it's a tricky thing because you definitely do need a product. You do need a product because if you don't have a product and you're selling something and it doesn't actually exist, that's fraud. And you don't want to commit fraud. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that a product is just a small step on a multi-step process to get someone from not knowing who you are to buying a service or a product from you. And you know, there's so many different steps, like demand generation. You have to build trust. You have to be able to communicate what you actually do. You have to be able to find the people that need this product. You have to be able to convince them that you're the person that can solve this problem for them. And then you have to be able to deliver, and you have to be able to do it profitably. And then you have to be able to scale, right? Like there are all these steps along the way, but so many people just focus on that one step, which is product. And I was there too. Here's another example. This is a productivity tracker that I actually use on a daily basis. This is genuinely how I track my work, and you know, you can link it to like a Google Sheets, and it works. It's fine. It's all good. But again, this kind of thing only really works when you have enough people that are willing to use this product, that you have a community effect that comes on top of just the core features, because there are so many time trackers on the marketplace. And yes, this one is perfectly useful for me because I built it for myself, but it doesn't mean that it's a good business generally. So the obvious next question is, what should you do instead? Well, try and think about, what do you actually want to see happening? Right? If your goal is to have a business where someone is paying you to solve a problem for them, what is the best way to make that happen? And the most obvious answer is, you want to talk to the people that you want to be using your product, and you want to see if there are problems that you can solve in addition to or instead of the problem that your product currently solves. So you pitch them with an idea, or you give them an MVP that they can play around with and see if people like it, see if people use it, and get feedback. User feedback is the most powerful thing when you're developing a new product, and it's unlikely that you would have seen this happen unless you worked as a product development or product manager at a startup of some scale. You probably wouldn't have seen the full life cycle of product development. What you would most likely have seen is the starting stage, when you're just getting into the startup ecosystem and you know how to program, and you fix a bug in a product that already exists, or you add a new feature, right? And that kind of reinforces this thinking where, oh, product development is building a product, but you're missing the context of every step that came before that, because what happens before that is you look at the broad strategy of the business, you look at what you currently offer, you look at what you would like to offer based on user feedback, and then you talk to users, you look at what problems you can solve given the resources that you have, and you implement a solution. And all you're seeing is that final step of implement a solution. But you have to have that context. You have to have that context of, this is what the user needs, and we can provide it for them with the resources that we have. And so the thing that you have to do, and YC talks about this a lot, is just go out and talk to users. It's the easiest thing you can do to accelerate your progress in the early stages. And it's an extremely valuable skill to have, because if you can do this correctly, if you can talk to users and generate insights that you can apply to where you want to take your product and business, this is universal. Like, you can apply this anywhere. And take this from someone who's launched like so many products, probably 12 or so different products that haven't worked, and have launched, I would say, about 5 that have worked. 2 of which were at a startup that's doing over $1 million a month. So if you have an idea, go out and verify it. Make sure that it works. Make sure that people want it. You can only do what you know how to do. So start with the best thing that you can do, given the resources that you have. Orient yourself a bit more towards action and feedback loops rather than perfecting the product. Like, put a bit of positive pressure towards launching and reiterating, because the likelihood that your first product is good is basically 0. And that has been proven universally across every business that has launched ever and become successful. The likelihood that your first thing that you ever make in a particular business or field is actually good is 0. So take that, put that in your mind, and bearing that in mind, think about what you can do now to get feedback that orients you more towards success. And if you're not sure how to get started with those steps, then you can join Gone VC. It's completely free. We're a community of founders that help support each other, do weekly sessions and check-ins and goal setting and workshop, and basically help you accelerate the first few steps of this process.